What's up YouTube, Alex here. Today we're gonna talk about the third deal in this 9-part series. This is actually part 4, but it's the third deal. It's the first one I bought as a foreclosure. I made some good money on it. I made some mistakes I'm gonna share with you. And in the video, I'm gonna tell you about a story that is so ghetto fabulous, you're not gonna believe it. Okay, so if you've been following the series, the first 2 deals were owner occupied. I moved in them. I was saving money the whole time. So this is a long time in the works. This is not an overnight thing, but after a few years of saving, those 2 first deals, I felt really confident now that I could go off on the MLS, buy a foreclosure, rehab it, put a tenant in it, and make some money. Okay, so I go to my realtor. This, by the way, is my 3rd realtor. The first one, I use one realtor. The second one, I use a totally different realtor. This was kind of an investor-friendly realtor, so I was very fortunate to have her. So I go to her and I say, look, I want to buy a foreclosure. Send me everything that's on the market, and I want it to be all in around 70 grand because I think that's all I had. My goal was to be all in around 70 grand, have it appraised for 100, rent for 900, 950. That gives me equity, that gives me cash flow, and it allows me to use basically, like I said, I think I had 72 grand to my name and I was prepared to spend just about all of it. So those are the metrics I had to be. She goes off, she puts it in her, in her little system, and it starts sending me everything that was close. And she starts feeding me deals. We were looking pretty deliberately. I was willing to spend 100% of my pretty much net worth. I didn't have any equities, and I had, my house had equity in it, but I had no other funds. This was 100% of my life savings, and I was willing to do that because I saw it as a really low downside risk. What could possibly happen? The house is going to be rented for. The worst thing that could happen is my cash gets stuck in, and at the time, that wasn't such a big worry for me. So I knew that going all in had a much different effect for the way I invest and my decision making than it was to borrow somebody else's money. There's a whole different game when you got skin in the game, baby. Okay, we were putting in offers, and like so many people, all I was running into was the wall of rejection. No, 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 all the time. This went on for quite a bit now, and that's not to be unexpected. I tell people usually you're gonna put in 25 to 30 offers. I think I had put in 35 offers over 3 weeks and I got nothing. And that's okay, that was to be expected, but growing pains. So she comes to me with this off-market deal and she goes, hey, I got a buyer, a seller who wants to sell this house for 45 grand. Here's the story, actually a funny story. The guy before me bought this house as a foreclosure for 55,000, and he was gonna rehab it himself. Like so many people tell me that they're gonna rehab their own house because it's cheaper. We're about to find out. So he sells me this house for 45 grand. I said, why the 10,000? He goes, well, why is it a $10,000 loss when he's only had it for 3 months? I go check the house out. It was a dump except for one room. One room had been renovated. And the whole bit was he was gonna renovate this thing himself, and he just lost the heart. He couldn't do it, didn't wanna do it, didn't have the time, whatever, underestimated the resources we're gonna need. So he takes a $10,000 loss in 3 months, and I get this house that's been totally, it's a total shit show except for one room, which was nice. Had new floors and paint and trim. It was so funny too, it was a living room. So it's like, dude, you couldn't get through the living room without quitting. How are you gonna get to the bathrooms and whatnot? Anyways, his $10,000 mistake was my $10,000 windfall. So I find this place, 45 grand, lock it up. I wasn't super sure on rehab costs. I figured it'd be about 20 grand, maybe a little more. I knew the house would be worth about 90 when I was done, and I knew it could rent for 900. I was gonna pay 45, so I didn't really have a great contract at the time. So I locked the property up, and then I started getting bids, but a little too late. Rookie mistake, but I knew that I had enough wiggle room that I could account for, some of my gross errors. I don't really recommend it doing this way, but when you're new and you're an idiot like me, you gotta take some of these risks, man. As we're going, I knew I was gonna buy it for 45. I knew if the rehab was $25,000 or less, I was gonna be fine. We set a close for 20 days, and I was feeling very confident. So when you close with cash, there's not that much paperwork. In fact, it's only like 3 pieces of paper. So we set a 20-day close, I think. I go to the law firm. Check this out, man. I told you in the previous videos that I sacrificed everything cool I had in my life for the capital so I could save money. So I'm driving this beater of a truck, this awful truck, right? I mean, it's 280,000 miles. It's got a manual, a cracked windshield, and bald tires. Little Ford Ranger. It was terrible, brown interior. It was horrible. And it doesn't start all the time. And so what I would do is I'd have to get out and jiggle the battery cable every once in a while. Totally ghetto rig this thing. Anyways, so I go to the close in this house. I go to the law firm. It's in this nice business park area. And everybody's wearing suits. I was wearing a shirt and tie because I worked at a bank at the time. And so I go in there. I felt, I was feeling on top of the world. I just signed this house, signed for it with cash. I was 30, I don't know, in a little bit. I mean, I can tell you, it felt really good. Buying a house in cash. My parents still don't have their house paid off in cash. This one was done. I put a loan on it later, but I bought it in cash. And then I walk out and my car doesn't start. And so the next thing I know, and it's like July in North Carolina. So next thing you know, I got the hood popped and I'm tinkering around this thing, running back into the car, run back to the hood, trying to get this thing to start. There's people walking around and you know, it's impossible not to feel embarrassed. It was in my head, I know, and it was stupid and whatever, but it's impossible not to feel embarrassed when you're trying to get your terrible running vehicle to go, especially in front of a law firm. I mean, they probably weren't thinking I was there to start a car. They probably thought I was just a poor degenerate. And so I remember feeling really embarrassed. And at the same time, I remember in my head, I'm like, these people walking by, they don't know what I'm here for. They don't know that I paid my house in cash just now. They don't probably have their own house paid for in cash. And so that was a real specific moment for me of ghetto fabulous, that I really felt this weird thing where the sacrifice was paying off right in front of me by allowing me to buy the house, but the optics of it were totally reversed. I don't know, it was a real weird situation, but it's a really good story to tell. Okay, hilarious story aside, once I closed this deal, I realized how much of a pinch I had been in by not lining up contractors before. Like I said, I had done the stuff, so I had a pretty good estimate and feeling of what it was gonna need, but I didn't have contractors. And so I was already behind the curve because now I needed to go get bids from other contractors. So I start hitting everybody else I know up and I asking them, and I'm accumulating some names, and I swear, dude, I emailed or called 5 contractors to come bid on this property. 3 showed up. Of the 3 that showed up, I got bids from 2. And I called the 2 back from the bids and only 1 would return my phone call. That's the guy that got that job. Not because he was the best, not because I wanted him, not because he was the cheapest or the best priced or I felt the most confidence of him, because just like I told you in the last video, you got to show up. That guy showed up. So he got 20 grand of my money or $20,000 bid just because he was the only ding dong that would return my phone calls. So I wasn't super psyched about this guy, but you know, he was good at communicating and I knew I could, well, maybe not trust him, but I knew he'd go in there and do some of the work. It needed everything. It needed paint throughout, floors throughout. We needed to redo one of the bathrooms and add a shower in one of the bathrooms. We converted one of the bedrooms to a 4-bedroom because I know that I can get a lot higher rent. It needed a new HVAC, which I have another guy for, but it needed everything. So it was a large scope of work to rely on this, you know, it was a guy and his kid kind of doing this work. He had crews, but it was just a mess, man. So we went 5 grand over budget. So we were at 25 grand. It was in my budget, but it was still, you know, kind of pissed me off. He promised it was going to get done in 3 weeks, 4 at the most, which turned into 8 weeks total. At some point during the thing, he left to go to Texas for 2 weeks. How unprofessional. I mean, maybe in my opinion, it was unprofessional. And then at the very end, man, he starts nickel and diming me. In fact, he had painted the door red and then later changed the handles. Well, the new handles didn't match the circle of where the old paint was. So there's this half moon unpainted part of the door. And I was like, dude, what's the deal? You painted this door, you put the handles in, you did them in the wrong time, like an idiot, like a rookie. And now the thing, it's not painted. He goes, well, I got to come back out where it paints. It's going to be $125. So he started nickel and diming me over this stuff. And I was like, dude, we parted ways, not on great terms. In fact, I've never spoken to him again. And I've gone off to buy a bunch more houses. So he'd lost. But point is, you know, treacherous contractor, that's the norm, dude. Bad contractors are the norm, especially when you're new. If you're a really big operation, you can afford great contractors. The good contractors rise to the top. If it's a small one deal at a time thing, you're going to get the contractors that are geared towards one at a time. So know that you're going to get bad contractors. Run them tight. Always have replacements ready waiting in the wings though. Management. So I didn't really know any property managers yet. I had been self-managing my property and I talked to some others and I tried to use some others and they always just really disappointed me. So I was like, man, I got to find somebody better. Well, over the last few months I had been meeting with this other fellow investor, another veteran. He owned 22 single-family homes himself. They were all paid off already. He was only a little bit older than me. Actually, it was kind of astounding. And so I looked up to this guy and we'd been meeting for lunches on Fridays just to build this relationship because I knew I needed other investors that were friends. I talk about networking all the time. You got to build these relationships. I've been talking to this guy for 8 months before I even thought to hire him. So in addition to having all these rentals, he's self-managed and he took on some other additional rentals for other people on occasion. So I said, hey man, come manage this rental for me. It'll be easy. He says, yes. Boom, locked it up. Within a week, he had it rented $950 a month. It's still rented for $950 a month. I couldn't believe it. So I refinanced it, but you gotta wait 6 months. So we waited 6 months. I was collecting good income, $950 a month with no mortgage. It was pretty nice. I don't have that luxury anymore because now I got tons of mortgages. But so 6 months goes by, I call the bank, they coming out to appraise it, 95 grand. Not so bad, another moneymaker. This was a little bit harder because I didn't move into it and I had to deal with that terrible contractor and now I had a property manager, so it was a little bit more moving parts. But I went slow enough by doing the first 2 deals the way I did that I felt really confident to design and implement all this infrastructure without feeling that much stressed out. It actually went easier, this deal, than the previous deal. So we refinanced, closed the loan, I got 100% of my money back, I got 25% equity left in the deal, I make good cash flow, it's 100% passive because somebody else runs it, and now I have all my money in a bank account ready to go do deal number 4. All right, that's the whole deal. Pretty self-explanatory actually. Buy it in cash, pay for cash for the rehab, get some property management in there, get it rented, go refinance it, pull your money back. You gotta know the ARV in advance, and you should do better than me about getting contractor bids, but pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy at least for me. Okay, lessons I learned from this deal. 1, line your contractors up in advance, man. Rookie mistake that I made trying to get the deal, then worry about contractors. What I recommend is you start networking with contractors immediately. Even if you're not buying a deal for a year and a half or so, even if you're not buying a deal for 2 years, start building those relationships now so when the time comes, you know exactly who to call and get them on over there. The other thing that people make mistakes is when they're bidding, they go and get contractor estimates while they're bidding. That's a mistake because if you don't get the property, you didn't waste the contractor's time. Instead, get the property under contract and then have contractors go out there and bid while it's under contract during your due diligence. If you can't make it work, then you can cancel the deal on your due diligence. This way, you're not wasting anybody's time because you have access to the deal. So if a contractor shows up and he gives you a good bid, you can lock it down. If you have contractors bid when you don't have access to the deal, how many times are they going to come out there and give you a good bid for a property that you then can't close on? You're just wasting everybody's time. Second thing I learned, everybody gets a deal if they put in the work. If you put in the work long enough. Everyone gets a deal if they're bidding on properties consistently. So what happens is a lot of people, they look at deals, they analyze deals, they bid on a few, and then they get mad or they get upset or they get disappointed or discouraged that it doesn't work. It's like, dude, put in 30 bids, you'll get one. Put in bids for 6 months, you'll get one. Everybody gets a deal if you do it strategically and consistently. If you're lowballing people for the sake of it, that doesn't work. And if you're, think of it the opposite way. If you only bid once and get that deal, then you probably overpaid. Stick with it, man, long term. Be strategic, be deliberate, bid on a lot of properties, be persistent, do it for a long time, and everybody gets a deal if they stick with it long enough. Third thing I learned, focus on the big picture. Man, it's so easy to get distracted by social norms or consumerist culture. I love telling that story about my beater truck, going to the law firm, buying it, having that raggedy thing break down on me. It was embarrassing at the time, but looking back now, it's like so many people, I actually had people that would make fun of me for that truck because it was so ugly. Here's the deal, man. Nobody remembers that old truck except me. Nobody remembers that embarrassing story about me. You don't remember the people you see with a broke down vehicle. They remember, but it's all in your head. That was all in my head. I tell that story now for fun, but at the time it kind of it didn't mess me up, but I remember thinking, I was laughing at the time, but I remember thinking, that's a weird way to feel, that embarrassment. And, nobody remembers those things, and the only thing that's left is my mad cash flow from the property. The short-term pain is really short-term. The long-term gains are really big. And these things really hold people back. They won't make any sacrifice. They won't take on any discomfort. They won't sell their car to buy a beater off Craigslist. They won't give up fancy clothes. They won't give up all their creature comforts. They won't give up anything. And yet they want to have some grand vision for their life. Think about the big picture, man. Ask yourself, my friend, what are you not willing to do to make your goals happen? All right, that's deal number 3. Thank you for watching. I hope this was useful and entertaining. As usual, if you have any extra questions or you want more context, go to brokersofchoice.com, 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 and you can find everything in full transparency. There's no pitches on the website, no ads. I don't really take email addresses that much sometimes. Stick with me for the next episode. You'll see deal number 4. Thank you for watching.